everyone, and welcome to the Indigenous Voice. Today is the 29th of November, and first I would like to thank the volunteer and SHA staff who make this show possible. And it's really honor today to have with us Sherry Lee Williams from the Métis community here in Victoria. Welcome, Sherry, to the show. Thanks very much. And first, would you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Tell me a little bit about myself.
Yes.
Well, I'm a contemporary visual artist living here in Victoria. I'm also a singer, songwriter, and writer. And I'm a mother and a grandmother. What else would you like to know?
Okay. As a member of the Métis community here, and for our audience who has, including myself, who my knowledge is not that much, would you tell us a little bit about a little bit of the history and the Métis community and their struggles?
Certainly. Well, as I was explaining earlier, the Métis people are one of three distinct Indigenous groups in Canada. And a lot of people don't understand much about us. We were often referred to as the forgotten people. And but we descended originally from the influx of particularly the French, sometimes Scottish settlers, and the Indigenous people. But in order to claim Métis ancestry, you have to be able to trace your roots to that original settlement in the Red River District in Manitoba. And it's something that we're very proud of, that we have not only can trace our lineage that far, and we can do that because many of the original Métis people were were Catholic, and so they kept excellent records. So many of us can trace our genealogy to the 1600s in Canada, and of course in our First Nations, part of that genealogy goes back forever here. So it's something that we're very proud of.
And about in the community here in Victoria, how they are doing?
Well, the Métis Nation of Greater Victoria is an active community. They host potlucks. They do a lot of work with youth, trying very much to keep our own traditions alive, which is hard when you're a small culture in Canada. So they offer things like traditional beadwork, trying jigging, that's the type of dance that we do. They do a lot of things like that in community building.
Well, I'm sure the major subject today is art and your work and the music, but I thought to ask about in the process of reconciliation. For you as a Métis, how do you think about the whole process going on right now in Canada?
Well, I think that the process of reconciliation is extremely important, particularly because, Canada's Indigenous people as a whole have been oppressed, for hundreds of years. But the Métis people, particularly, we still don't have the same rights as First Nations or Inuit people have. We still have a long way to go in trying to settle some of that. It's a very complex past that we have, but unlike many First Nations cultures who were given lands and places to be, we were actually forced off of our land. We originally in the beginning, the Métis farmed in the Red River District, and they farmed on long strips of land that went to the river. And so what happened at the time is the government said, well, whenever the Métis people are off of their land, anybody can go settle there. And so eventually they were forced out of Manitoba, and many came west. And so not only do we not have a homeland per se, many lost their communities and ultimately lost their language and their culture. And then of course with the racism and the 60s scoop and all the horrors that happened to Indigenous people, Métis people were also, many of them lost their children as well. But again, even with the latest the government trying to put some of that right, the Métis are also left out of that. So even though their children were taken, and abused, they still don't qualify for the same rights as First Nations or Inuit. And that's why it's very important to clarify when you're speaking to an Indigenous person, to understand the difference, because we're still struggling and still trying, after so many years, you know, to even be considered equal to our other Indigenous brothers and sisters in Canada.
I think a year and a half ago was a decision about the Métis community, including.
That's right. So we were, the government, you know, it was quite an important decision that said Métis people are actually considered Indian, which is, you know, which is interesting, and it should mean that we are equal, that we have equal rights, but we actually don't. And that is still a battle that's been going on for many, many, many years, trying to reclaim what really is our birthright.
Do you think the United Nations recognition, realizing that the Indigenous right and their new decision lately, which Canada accepted, is going to make any change for the
I think, you know, I think we have a long way to go. But again, even within our own country, people don't understand the distinct differences that Canada has 3 distinct Indigenous communities, you know, peoples. We have First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. We're very separate, completely different culture, different music, different language. And within Canada, we have over 600 Indigenous tribes as well. So it gets very complicated to understand the differences. But when you start to look at the artwork or the music of the 3 distinct groups, then you start to have an understanding of why we're proud of our own culture and why it matters that you address us properly. You know, it matters because it's our culture and we're proud of who we are.
And talking of art and music, please tell me about the Métis art.
Okay, well, originally when the nuns, the French nuns first came to Canada, the Grey Nuns, they taught the young Métis girls how to embroider the flowers of France. And prior to glass beads being available in Canada, Indigenous women embellished their partners' clothes, their moccasins, whatever they had, they embellished with dyed quills and things like that. So, but when the French came, of course, they brought embroidery thread and beads, and of course, the Métis women were very quick to take these beautiful things and to transform basically everything. I mean, the husbands were adorned in beadwork from head to toe, the saddle blankets, the sleigh dogs. I mean, just everyday utilitarian things were covered in this incredible, beautiful beadwork. But originally it came from the French nuns.
French, wow.
Yes, it's very interesting. Yeah, and so we were known as the flower beadwork people, one of the things that we're called. And so often when you see beadwork, I mean, yes, many different tribes did beadwork, but often it's geometric. But Métis particularly did the beautiful floral beadwork, and we still do. And so Louis Riel said over 100 years ago that my people will sleep for 100 years, and when they awake, it will be the artists that give them back their spirit. So for me, art and music and representing my culture in that way is very important to me, because it speaks to great loss, you know, but it also speaks to a culture that's resilient and still here. You know, we're still here despite all of the things that have happened. So unlike a lot of traditional West Coast artists, who their art is very different from ours and steeped in their own history and tradition, I consider myself a contemporary artist, and I don't feel bound by tradition. But having said that, for me it was a great honor to take the traditional beadwork style and use my skill, which is painting, and to paint it, because I couldn't possibly do the beadwork. It's incredibly difficult. And so for me that was a way of honoring my ancestors, my own family, and because the flowers were often healing plants as well. And it was also a way of expressing your love, you know. So a mother might, you know, bead a complete cradle board for her child, and it spoke to how much they loved them. So it's really quite a beautiful thing. It's not just something pretty, but, you know, it's deeper than that. So I chose with my drums the BC Cancer Agency had put a call out for Indigenous artists to make proposals on behalf of the Métis for work to go into the oncology departments. Because when anybody's diagnosed with cancer, of course, it's a frightening thing. And so I thought it would be really neat to take the artwork of a West Coast native person, the drum maker, and embellish it with our floral beadwork. So I approached an artist, Joni Glendale, and asked her if she would, allow me to do that. I'm very careful about the protocol here because we live on Coast Salish territory, and I always like to honor that. So I asked her, I said, would you be willing for me to do that with your drums? And she was. And Joni's a very spiritual woman. When she makes the drums, it's an act of prayer. So she prays the whole time she's making the drum. And for me, that was really important. It's a spirit, the drums are very sacred and they're spiritual. It's not just something you bang away on and make noise. In Indigenous culture, the drum is the heartbeat of Mother Earth. And so for me, because I lost my father and my best friend to cancer and many, many loved ones, I felt it was a really kind of a heart offering I wanted to do. So yeah, I painted the 6 drums, and very proud of that work, actually.
And amazing that you have, as you said, the mix between the art of Coast Salish.
Right. Yeah, it was really a wonderful thing because it doesn't often happen that we can bring those cultures together. And it was all sort of done in that thought of reconciliation, Here we are, and we're trying to do this in Canada. Well, let's start even amongst ourselves, because even amongst Indigenous people, there's, this misunderstanding sometimes about who we are. So I was very honored that she allowed me to do that on her fabulous work. Her drums are beautiful. So.
And you did as well study in UVic here.
That's right, yes. I started in 2000. I did a 3-year program at Victoria College of Art. My goal was to be an arts professor. And then I started at UVic, and I did 4 years there. And unfortunately was unable to finish my program because I was injured in some very unfortunate car accidents. And so I had to stop in 2009. So I'm finally back now this year, still trying to finish my program. But of course, because I have a disability, it's very difficult for me to do things the way I used to do them. But I'm still very determined to try to complete what I started. I no longer want to be a professor, but I would like to finish that program. But as a part of what happened to me with sort of having my dreams snatched away from me, because I, developed fibromyalgia and chronic pain syndrome, and I could no longer paint the way I used to paint in big brush strokes, and I had a lot of body problems. So I sort of asked myself one day, well, what can you do? Mm-hmm. And my partner, Wilf Davies, is a piano player and a music teacher, has taught music on the West Coast for years. And I thought, well, I always loved to sing, but I had horrendous stage fright, like just terrible. And I thought, well, you're going to have to get over it. And I stuttered very badly, also from the injury. When I would speak, I would stutter. And so it took all the courage I had, actually, to begin to sing. So that's kind of what I've been doing between 2009 and now, is developing my music. And so that's been another really wonderful way to express myself.
Mm-hmm. And you just mentioned Louis Royale.
Yes, Louis Royale, yes.
We're talking about, in the end, the art is going to bring back.
That's right.
It seems like you are moving from one form of the art to the other, and it's kind of just an easy transition because...
well, I always believe that, first of all, I believe everybody's creative in some way. I really believe that. And I love to inspire people to do that. But secondly, I think that, an artist is who I am. first. You know, I am first of all a creative person. And so I feel like if I no longer can paint, well, then I will sing. And if I can't sing, then I'll write. And if I can't write, well, I will find some other way to be creative because it's who I am.
I agree with you. Everybody is creative in somehow,
Absolutely.
but no, not everybody appreciate what is art is and how it's important. Some of them deal with it as a entertainment matter or a commercialized issue. But I'm sure you have a different feeling here. It's part of your life, and as you said, you understand that it is the thing. It's the one matter is going to bring back the culture and everything back to people. So
Well, I always say that what do we have left when a culture ends, right? When a culture ends, what do we have? We have the art, the literature, and the music, if we're lucky. So in every culture that's passed, that's what we study years later. We study the pottery, we study whatever artifacts are left. So to me, art is incredibly important. But it's important in a contemporary way as well. It's important that we honor the history when we make art, but it's also important that we're contemporary people. And I think that a lot of times, people who study Indigenous people would like to keep us in that past. And I believe that Indigenous people are forward thinking. We are here and now. We are modern people. You know, we're not just, living in teepees and riding horses, although some still do and some still want to. But really, we're a contemporary people like everyone else. And we just don't want to lose that part of us that's very important.
I don't know about modernity, but as you know, become more in harmony with your environment, the more modern you are. And that kind of level of modernity, I think the Indigenous people know it long time ago.
That's right.
It's kind of weird anyway.
We're kind of going full circle, I think, in a way, which is not a bad thing. For many, many years, of course, they tried to, take the Indian out of the Indigenous person. That was the whole idea behind the residential schools. Save the man, but kill the Indian. They didn't want us to speak our languages or to honor our culture. Well, now that's changing slowly. But the part of us that's integral to who we are, that love of nature, that it's like trying to tease apart art and music to me. It's really difficult because it's who we are, and I think if you talk to any Indigenous person, you'll find a very common thread amongst us. There's usually a great sense of humor, a love of the land, an appreciation for the wildlife. I mean, even though I don't come from the West Coast, where I come from, it's a different kind of environment, but it's the same.
Still,
that same thing of honoring, if you take, for example, in hunting, people out here don't understand hunting and fishing maybe, but where I come from, I was raised that way. It's how we survived. And so, but it was never done without honoring the animal, So Indigenous culture is very rich in that way.
And mainly based on your need to survive,
That's
not
right.
to go and wipe out all the creature to send them to Walmart shelves. I mean.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Talking about the music, what influenced the Métis music, like especially the one you work on?
Originally, of course, it was the Celtic people who came, Scottish and the Irish, and why not? So originally the music and the French, so, all mixed together. So Métis music typically is very high-stepping, has a sound almost like, has a Celtic influence. So they call it jigging. Other cultures may call it clogging, but there's a very high-stepping kind of dance that's done. And the music is fun and lively like that. Now, I grew up with that kind of music. My grandfather was a Métis fiddle player. He played all the dances and he sang in the community where I grew up. Now, I don't do that kind of music particularly. I actually sing quite a broad range of music. I like jazz, I like country music, I like not so much pop, but I like to sing anything that has soul and meaning. For me, the lyrics have to have meaning, and I have to love the melody too, or I'm not going to do it. So we have a band called Southbound and Friends, and we like to play for the community. We usually play for free once a month at a cafe called Gorgeous Coffee, and we also play at Spiral Cafe here in town. We like to play for the senior citizens. We go into the nursing homes and play music for them. So, to me, music is about giving back to my community. It's something that we have and that we can give, and if people love it, great. And so we often try to engage other musicians, and we invite other people to come and perform with us. So for us, it's all about community building.
Just occurred to me, is there any relationship between village and farming? And when you mentioned the Celtic and you mentioned the Irish, that kind of style of music, is it coming also out of the village, where you farm, the community living, sharing the wealth together? Is that would you say there is some relationship between farming and this?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think when you live in a rural community, like I grew up 40 miles from town, so we had to make our own music, and so people did. I mean, people come to the house, and somebody would bring a guitar or a fiddle, and everybody sang. And so I grew up singing. I grew up, my mother sang to us in the garden and sang to us in the car, and music was just part of life. It was joy. And I think the Celtic influence, and my mother's half Irish, so I do have that as well. I think it's just part of those cultures. It's very deep, as it is within most cultures. I believe music is. It ties us together, and it helps us tell our stories and remember our stories when we're old. I mean, when you go and you sing for the senior citizens, sometimes they can be, at a place where they maybe don't speak anymore. And if you can sing a song they remember from their youth, you'll see them light up and sing along, and it's very rewarding to be able to give that to somebody.
By the way, Deb, having a background Irish, I am an Arab, by the way, and we have a great love for the Irish people.
Oh, dear.
Because they are so oppressed for a long time
Yes.
by the British.
Yes.
So you have kind of two sides.
Oh,
you
yes.
have the oppression who dropped upon the indigenous people here, and also we know what happened to the Irish. People find out through there is the potato famine, for example.
Yes.
This is what.
And that's what brought many of them here. But I think what I take away from that is the resilience. Métis people like to refer to themselves as resilient.
Yes.
Because if we weren't resilient, we wouldn't be here. We would never have survived. And same with the Irish, and I'm sure many cultures who are oppressed around the world. It's that love of life and that resilience that often sustains us when things are not good. Yeah.
And plus, the Irish music is amazing music.
Oh, it is. Oh, it is. I mean, if you can sit through that kind of music, you're probably
and
not.
it's a groove of music. It's not like a star. It's a groove of music.
Yeah,
usually.
it's joyful,
Yeah.
And
Okay. What is there any of the a concert you're doing, or how do you do your music?
Well,
beside you mentioned about the Cancer Society and working.
Yeah, you mean with the music? Well, what we do is Gorgeous Coffee, which is a great little place on Gorge and Tillicum, they have music 7 days a week. And so what they do is they allow us to put on a show once a month. And so we go and we put on a show for the public. Last month we did a tribute show. So I did Etta James and Patsy Cline, and it was so much fun to dress up and play those roles. So that's what we like to do. And Wilf and I often travel to the U.S., and when we're in the U.S., we like to play. Down there, country music is very big, and because I grew up on country music, down there they love country music. So I'm pretty flexible that way. I love all kinds of music. But
Nice. Coming back to the art beads, would you tell us about these? You brought us a couple of drums.
Right. So these drums that I brought you, one is a 20-inch, and the other one I believe is a 12-inch. These are the drums that I was telling you that Joni Glendale makes, and a lot of people, want to have them because they're quite unique. I mean, a lot of people paint on drums, but I don't really know anyone that does what I'm doing in terms of doing, embellishing them in our traditional beadwork style. And the painting is done with a tiny brush, and it's done by dropping a drop of paint at a time. So it's a very meditative way of working.
A long
And for me, very spiritual, because I often pray while I'm working, and I think about, the healing. I mean, I call them healing drums, Métis healing drums, because there's still so much healing to do. Yeah.
So how long would take, for example, to do?
I try not to count. My brother was one day counting, but I tried not to do that. So anywhere, I would say, depending on the size of the drum, maybe 60 hours. I don't know exactly. I try not to, for me, it's just, I love the color, I love the paint, I love the beauty of creating the healing flowers, And so, yeah, it's just very meditative. And it's something I can do where, like I said, when I was younger, I liked to work very large, which takes a lot of physical strength, extending your arms and so on, and I can't really do that now. So for me, the drum is lovely because I can just, paint, and if my arm hurts or I'm tired, I just stop and I start again another day.
This is a weird question. What about when you feel the whole project is completed? How is about that point?
Well, that's an
interesting.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. What I do now, particularly with the drums, because the drums are a very specific way of working. If I'm painting a painting, for example, or whether it's a portrait or whatever, I actually really love to do free expression painting. So I like to just begin. I don't like to have a plan. I just like to begin and let the spirit move me, But the drums are different because I have to design the pattern, first of all. So I create all the flowers and I create the pattern. And but I go very slowly because, and what I do then, so I go very slowly and then I photograph them every so often. And then I study the photograph, because I find if you study a photograph, it's different than looking at the work. You're not distracted so much by the work. You see what needs to be done. And so for me, as I get closer to being finished, I go very slowly because it's not something you can fix or change if you make a mistake. So you have to be kind of clear about where you're going with it. But I love the color, the beautiful color, and placing one color beside another color for me is a particularly beautiful thing, and making them sing, it's. Art is musical too in its own way,
And the spiritual process in the end kind of come to conclusion, you think?
It does, and somehow the drum will speak to you, Sometimes I will get to a place I think, is it done? And then I let it rest, And I come back to it, and then it's like, yes. So, I mean, it kind of feels, artists talk about the muse, the muse that flows through us. And it's very much that way with painting, I love that place where I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I have a general idea, but I love that place of relaxing into the process and letting it evolve and letting it take me along. It's a journey.
I really relate to that because I tried back in Syria to write some short story, and I did publish some, and it was like a cycle. And my preferred method was just to let the pen lead me, and suddenly you end up somewhere else. But there is no point where you feel the cycle is just completed, or not, and then it become like but when it's completed, it's an amazing thing.
It is.
Even if you wake up next day and you come back and read it, and you will be shocked, what did I do? But during while you're doing the process, it's something so beautiful.
It is, and that's what really excites me. Like I love to inspire people, as I was saying, to be creative and to paint, because it's that process, that journey, that is where the magic is. The finished product, when it's done, I mean, I can be happy with my work, but the joy for me is in the journey. It's in that beautiful place of losing yourself in the beauty of it, whether it's writing or whether it's painting or whatever I'm doing, is losing yourself in that moment and just letting it be, whatever it is. And the not knowing is what's exciting, right? I mean, some artists work very specifically, and they sketch everything out, and they know exactly what they're going to do, and that's their process, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I've learned that I like the journey, and I like the magic of not knowing and feeling the creative energy flow through me, and I'm always surprised. It's like, wow, I didn't know that was coming, but here it is. I mean, it's not like I sat down with the drums and thought for 10 years I'm going to do a drum. You know, it was that evolution of wanting to do something important and wanting it to be really special. And but when I was creating the patterns, I mean, it was just, yeah, it just came, you know.
So, as you mentioned, from a bad accident, uh, in the end, there is always something positive would be showing up, and especially if you want to have that something positive. So singing now, do you feel like singing is kind of it's a rewarding like the other, or you prefer any other? What is your favorite form of art, like singing now, or?
You know, that's an interesting question. I actually, I can't say that I have a favorite. I would say when I was a small child, I was 2 years old. I used to sing in my parents' cafe for money because there was a horse across the street I wanted to ride, and I would try to sing. I was so shy, I would hide under the table. People would give me money. So when I was a young person, I wanted to sing. Music was what I really wanted to do. And then, you know, it just didn't work out in my life. You know, I sang to my children and so on, but I was terribly shy, and I didn't have the opportunity really to perform that much. And but it really wasn't until I came out here, and then even after, you know, Wilf, my partner, he's been a professional musician his whole life, but even then, you know, for 12 years, I didn't sing with him. So. So now, yeah, now I'm doing them all. I'm also writing. What do I love more? I don't think I don't think I have a favorite. It depends what needs to be done. You know, if there's something I need to do that's creatively, painting-wise creative, I do that. But then if I'm too tired, I can always sing. I can sing if I'm really tired. So, you know, so music to me has been just a really joyful way of expressing myself that I can do when I'm not able to do other things too. So.
And when the music, it has an interaction with the people.
And that part is very special, you know. As I said, because I fought stage fright so badly, what I learned was sometimes when I look into the eyes of a person in the audience and I'm singing something that's important to me or, you know, very tender, and I see the connection, you know, it's the connection with the audience that I love. I don't do it because I'm the best singer or, you know, any of those things. There's really no ego in it for me. It's about love, and it's about giving something back. And if I can make somebody smile in an evening of music or make them remember something they loved when they were young, that's enough. It's good.
And what the subject of the songs you sing?
Oh, I probably tend to be one of those sappy love song singers.
Oh, okay.
But not always. No, I like things that have meaning. I think I would say, I don't know what the word is for that as a performer, but music for me, whether I'm singing jazz or I'm singing something more contemporary, or I'm singing something country, I always like something that has, that speaks to me personally, because I feel like, I think I'm an emotional singer. When I perform, I'm deep within myself, and I'm giving something of myself that has meaning for me. So to sing something silly that I just don't like to do it. I mean, lots of people do, but it's not my thing. I have to really feel it. It has to be important in order for me to want to perform.
So do you write your songs?
I have written quite a few yet. Yes, I'm not performing my own material just yet. I'm still waiting till the time is right. But I do love to write. You know, I write for Dialogue magazine, and they're great. I mean, they're a local island magazine that's printed up in Nanaimo, and they collect writing and artwork. I often have my artwork or photography published in the magazine as well. But I like to write little things for them as well. So yeah, so writing is just, again, something that's kind of natural to me, and it either is there or it's not. So like you, I sit down with a pen and I just begin. And if something great comes, good, and if it doesn't, well, another day.
And it's like sometimes, I mean, there's Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I'm sure you heard of that amazing writer. He said something about you should writing is like any other job. You sit down 8 hours behind a desk, whether you produce a line or 20 pages, it's just a job. You sit down and you do it. It has not doesn't have only the creative part. It also has discipline.
Right. Right. I agree with that to a certain extent. I mean, I have the luxury of not having to write for a living. You know what I mean? Like, I think writers who are professional writers,
is a big
they have to
difference.
write, you
Uh-huh.
know, whereas I have the luxury of saying, well, not today. You know, not today's nothing's coming or whatever. But I do think it's important to discipline yourself. Also with artwork, it's the same. You know, art, music, anything great is not going to come if you don't work at it. You have to work. And I think that if I could give that to anybody, you know, because often people will look at my paintings and say, how do you do that? I could never do that. And I say, well, actually you could. But if you worked at it as long as I've worked at it, and you spend as many hours as I have, you could. I know you could, you know?
Become part of you.
Yeah, of course, but it's discipline. You know, I mean, any kind of creative endeavor, you know, to become proficient in it is mastery, and mastery is just simply working, you know. And so, you know, with writing, I think it's very beneficial to write every day if you can, even a little bit, you know. Julia Cameron, she wrote that great book, The Artist's Way. And what she says, every day you get up, you write three pages of just whatever's in your mind, you know, and you just get it out of your system, whatever is rolling around in your head, and then you clear the way for the creative process. And I think that's a really great advice, and I try to do it. I don't always do it.
Sherry, we have a few minutes left, but I would like really to know about this lovely looking maklak you brought us today.
Right. These are my my maklaks. I brought them because I wanted people to see the beautiful floral beadwork that we do. These were made by a Métis elder for me, specifically in Manitoba. And when I was a child, I wore these growing up all the time. And they were my favorite things to wear because they're closest thing to being barefoot. You feel the earth beneath your feet. And so anyway, I had a Métis elder in Manitoba specifically make them for me. And I wept when I saw them. They're so beautiful. They're real, they're an heirloom. I mean, the workmanship in those, every bead is through the moose hide, is stitched down, one bead at a time. And if you ever tried to sew through leather, try it sometime. It's very difficult. So they're made in total traditional style. And for me, having them was honoring my grandmother, who always, she actually wasn't Métis herself, it was my grandfather, but she loved Indigenous people, and she was the one that always bought them for me. There's a difference between a maklak and a moccasin. You know, a lot of people know about a moccasin. A moccasin is a short, but the maklak comes to the knee, and that's because of the snow. So they're not really very good out here because of the rain, but where I come from, they're very, very warm, and you can wear them all winter in freezing snow and you'll never be cold. The most amazing thing to wear, actually, and beautiful.
I never wear any, but I hope one day I will have my maklaka.
Yes.
And, you remind me of my language with these kind of words. Sherry, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really honored.
It's an honor. Thank you very much.
Oh,
I
thank
really
you.
hope we will have you again soon to talk more about your work.
Absolutely. I'd love that. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sherry.
Okay.
And thanks for watching today's show of Indigenous Voice. Thanks.
Education, re-education, re-education. heart pounding as I ran for home late that night, with fear in my eyes, running away from the whites. A voice from above said, avoid that misguiding light. So I run for darkness, now I feel so alone. I see the lights of my village and I'm almost home. Too late, we're stolen from homes, kidnapped from families. I'm looking for answers to why your God can't stand me. I'm only 8, mind frame is too small to comprehend the word hate. I'm so innocent, I swear this has to be a mistake. So I'm led to believe in your organized religion. So God wants you to molest little native children. Families separated, children molested and abused. And this is stuff that you'll never hear on the news. How they stole my ancestors' future from the reservation, and us kids sent to boarding school isolation. I'm so lonely. What message is the creator trying to send? I'm so cold, so lonely without a friend. Sitting in this white man's world, doing my best to blend. Children sent to a world of hurt, what a destination. Keyword for the government was assimilation. Canada's true history has yet to be told. So me and the kids wrote the song so the truth will unfold.
Much humiliation for so many nations. It's time to re-educate the new generation. The past was hard, but the future's for the kids. The way of my people is how I'm gonna live. So much humiliation for so many nations. It's time to re-educate the new generation. The past was hard, but the future's for the kids. The way of my people is how I'm gonna live.
I'm growing older now, forgetting my tradition. Got locked in a closet cause a nun said I never listened. I was hurting many times from the priest and nun. Spoke my language the last time cause they stuck a needle through my tongue. I never did nothing, I never started trouble. So why's my backside always seeing a belt buckle? We were kidnapped, slapped, separated and hated. Every day I was called a dirty little native. Why am I called a savage? Why am I treated like a beast? I'm just a young child that forgot the word peace. I wanna run away from this residential school, cause every day it's destroying my mental views on family, trust, God, but most of all love. It feels like no one answers me when I look above, but I made it. I got to see my grandchildren go. This stuff's been bottled too long, and I think the world should know that we're still alive. They'll never destroy our spirit. I hope you don't just listen to the song, I want you to feel it, cause we were here in the beginning, we'll be here till the end. So thank you for listening. I mean,
so much humiliation for so many nations. It's time to re-educate the new generation. The past was hard, but the future's for the kids. The way of my people is how I'm gonna live. So much humiliation for so many nations. It's time to re-educate the new generation. The past was hard, but the future's for the kids. The way of my people is how I'm gonna live.
Each and every one of you for coming today. We just really appreciate that people have come forward, and I really want to thank my dear friend Belinda for all of, and Earl for what they have to bring forward. It reminds us that our way of life is not artifact, it's not mythology, it's live today, and they are our curriculum. They are the ones that are helping to guide the youth. And that's what our concern is here with this process, is that we are here to protect the rights of the youth. 2/3 of the population of most of the Indigenous communities is youth, and we need to help provide and protect that way of life. We don't want salmon to be part of a mythology that's only reflected in artwork. It's real. It was one of the first gifts provided to our people to sustain us, as well as the cedar was provided as a gift to sustain us. It kindles quickly so that we can find warmth. It also provided our shelter. You didn't need tools to work with cedar. You could split cedar just using water and wedges. So it was one of the most important gifts for us, as well as provided for the transportation system. So that's what our concern is when you ask us, how do we reconcile Aboriginal rights and Crown? I think it's really important that Crown begins to understand none of this is consultation until you hear what we're saying. We're very opposed to economic development that is resource plundering, whether it's marine environment or it's the land environment, resource plundering affects each and every one of us in our way of life. British Columbia has taken a lot of pride in its natural beauty, its natural resources, and here we are at the threshold of some serious exploitation that could cause our way of life to disappear completely. And for First Nations people, many of us, very concerned that as pipelines go through, as tankers go through, it affects the last existence of our remains in the land, of our artifacts in the land. Our place is removed from history as the land becomes developed, as it continues to be overturned. And we've had this, as Belinda talks about many of her stories, we've had many of our important, not artifacts, but important landmarks removed. And they tell us about important history, or about how our young people are to be taken through puberty. A stone bowl, for instance, removed from where it existed for probably centuries, just removed by non-native people wanting something that they consider to be valuable, that they need to have for their home, that they want to put in a fountain possibly in their garden. So that we're very concerned about what this impact will have on us as a way of life. I think that for me, thinking about the Salish Sea, now that it's been called the Salish Sea, that's something very significant, very important. It's there to be protected for all Salish people. It's a gesture of reconciliation, of recognition of those treaty rights, of those rights, as Earl said, existed and were practiced before proclamation, before the Royal Proclamation. And that we as saltwater people, before we had a Douglas Treaty, before we defended the Saskatchewan Bay Marine case, saltwater people were the richest people in the world. We were taught that by one of our great teachers, Dave Elliott Sr., that we never had to hunger for food, we never had to beg for money, because everything that we needed was provided for us by the riches of the sea. Where we live in Saya is one of the most important saltwater mudflats. And mudflat is very distinct in all the life forms that it provides. It's all there to provide and build on each system, sustaining each other. So that the eelgrass is there for the crab, it's also there for the 5 different kinds of salmon. They court each other in there. As well, there's many medicinal plants that are there to help clean the water and keep it clean. The barnacle life is there to keep the water clean. And we see all of that disappearing. Very, very concerned that wave action has an impact on that. Spills have an impact on that. And Earl talked about that wave action, the vibration, that we don't know all what it does to the microsystems that are in the water. And in Saskatchewan Bay, we also have the freshwater, saltwater marsh. It's a very distinct feature of the environment that has a very distinct purpose. Without it, there are microorganisms that will die off. So we have a great concern as this kind of economic development tries to push its way into our territory. And we're not just a land-based people, as many people have said here. We are marine-based. We have names of our places, places where we've been, places where we've lived. And our land base is very small because we didn't need to have an accumulation of land because we've used the water, we used the lands. Our families camped in very regular places. They met up in very regular places. They used the land in a very specific way. And that kept us strong as people, kept us united as people. Belinda provided her name, her Indian name that was given to her. My name is Tiwanama, and that name comes to me from Nanaimo. And that's to remind us where we originate from, where our mothers originate from. That's my great-great-grandmother's name, given to my mother. and then now give it to me and give it to my daughter. So it reminds us of who we're related to, but it also reminds us of where we come from, and so that if we do happen to be in a territory and we do want to have some fishing privileges or hunting privileges, we may have relations there if we share our name. So that often is something that we do, share our name. And I think that it is just a real concern, again, that we think about the cumulative effects of this kind of development. And it starts from that very small system, the algae system, the one-cell life form. I think it's very much of a concern. I saw a lady from Connecticut one time singing to a little one-celled animal, and that animal started to dance as she was singing. And she was just reminding us about how important our connection is to the smallest system. And much of the artwork reminds us of that all the time. The messages, the most important messages come to us from the smallest messengers. So you will often see a mouse as your most important messenger. A very humble being will come to you and provide that message. And I think that's how we as First Nations people are coming forward. We may be small in terms of what we're able to bring forward. We may not be able to have a lot of policy analysts, research at our disposal, lawyers at our disposal, but we come with a very important, clear message to save the environment. And it's not to save the environment for us to this day, but to save it for the generations of children that are ahead of us. And a real concern for us is that what sustains us as a people is our way of life. What sustains us as a people are our teachings. We want that to help our youth, to ground them in what's good about their identity, what's strong about their identity. And we want to make sure that we stand tall for the environment for them. We cannot just lay down and let this happen without saying something. This is not right. This is not consultation, because somewhere along the line, the minds have been already made up by the federal and provincial government, failing over and over and over again to recognize what has been put before you already about Aboriginal rights, Indigenous rights, First Nations rights, Douglas Treaty rights, whatever you want to call it. It's there. It's been laid out before you, and you need to recognize it and uphold it as we try to do, because it's very important. And I know I grew up on that mudflat, and I reflect over and over again how I used to watch our fishermen go out there. And like Belinda and others have said, the reef net fishery was a practice. But as we knew when we grew up, it was easy to get fish. It was easy to hunt ducks. They were there in vast quantity for us. Our table was set for us, and that's what Dave Elliott told us and wanted to instill in us, that we were the richest people in the world. And that mudflat has a particular smell, and some people don't like it. But when you walk out there on it, you can just see how alive it is, all of the different features of it. And we know very much that the eelgrass is damaged by boats, by tankers, just by people. We know how important that feature is to our bay, but also everywhere. We can't understand why the province allows those products to be harvested, and they call it aquaculture. And that's destroying as well our sea urchin. And the sea urchin is one of the most important products that we have. And it's being marketed internationally, but we cannot get it to sustain ourselves as a basic food. And now it's a medicine for the old people, and it's a gesture of respect because it's so hard to come by. So I think that we're asking to be heard. We're saying time and time again very consistently that we do not want to have these kind of developments happening in our waters or on our land. The hunting and fishing rights are there forever. They are not to be extinguished. They are not to be infringed upon. those were things that were told to us by the government of the day. We've been given other words: accommodation, mitigation, restoration, reconciliation. And a lot of times it's us who bear the burden of telling you what that means. Yet we've consistently said the same thing. It means let us live as people free in our own homeland and using the land and the water together to sustain us as strong, healthy people. I find that the whole process has been very disrespectful, it's very confusing, and it's very coercive. In many situations, the first thing that comes to our tables is the offer of a mutual benefits agreement. And I think that's very coercive to do that to people who are struggling with major health issues, issues of housing, and issues of really no economy, no way to build up an economy to sustain the people. So I really think that if you're taking anything back from the National Energy Board, it's to really go back to the table and really talk about mitigation. We were talking to them about mitigation, meaning how are we going to sustain the salmon fishery? How are we going to ensure that the waters are safe for the whale? And then all the other microsystems, as we said, that we talked about that are so important. We look at the Fraser River, we look at all of these estuaries that are so important to us. Will they be there if there's that wave action? And that's a big concern. And we already know what's happening to our salmon, that it's not even wild salmon anymore, that it's been contaminated, and that was an economic development idea. So I think we need to be careful in what we do as we step forward, but I think that it's been really clear from First Nations that we've said no thank you to this, and how do we push back? So I just want to say hi, Kahela. I really hope that you will hear people today and tomorrow and throughout the time that you're traveling, that you will hear what people are saying, and you understand that it's very hard to come forward to processes like this because so much of our words get interpreted as consultation. It's not consultation until we actually are heard, and particularly in British Columbia. British Columbia exists at the goodwill of First Nations. British Columbia is still unceded First Nations territory. Aishta